Hey, what's going on? We had some pretty big news this past week, and James and I just had to hop on a call to chat about it. I'm sure you all have not been able to escape the news, but we are talking about the Apple Vision Pro. So I think you all enjoy this one. Also, if you remember our sponsor, Moment, they create keyshot assets for designers, beautiful scenes and objects to go into your scenes. I've used them a lot on some of my work. They have given us an affiliate link. So now you all can use the affiliate link and we get a little kickback from that. So if you're in the market for some amazing, beautiful assets to ramp up your keyshot renders, definitely use our link and it's greatly appreciated. Also, you all know the deal. Like, subscribe, give us 5 stars. And specifically with this episode, go over to YouTube, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. This one is a pretty popular topic, so make sure to help us out there. It really boosts the algorithm. And you can also click the bell icon. We haven't done much of that, but click the bell icon on YouTube to get notified for future episodes. And yeah, let's kick it off with KYOSHY the Kid. Hey, welcome to Minor Details. I'm Nick.
And I'm James.
We're 2 designers in the tri-state area.
Sweating the small stuff.
Oh, yeah, we were trying to figure out what we should. I was thinking maybe we do 2 designers in one big city and one medium-sized city. Philly's pretty big.
Yeah. Well, I'm out in Reading right now. Reading, Pennsylvania.
2 designers one in the big city, one in the suburb of a medium-sized city, sweating the smallest.
Exactly.
How you been, man?
Not too bad.
Yeah, we're doing a little Zoom call / video chat thing because we got
things to talk about.
Important things, very important things.
Very important.
Oh man. Yeah, I thought we might just hold off on the updates until the second half of the episode, but I think we should get into the main topic here.
The big one.
The big one. You all know what it is. It's the Apple Vision Pro, man.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe just first impressions, gut reaction. What was your feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I think my first reaction was just obviously excitement that it was finally here after years of rumor and speculation that it's finally arrived. And, obviously the demo videos are now like so stunning and beautiful that it's hard not to come out feeling good about a new product launch from Apple. Like, I do have to say I kind of miss the live events, if for nothing else than the live gaffes and like the cringe, although there's still plenty of cringe. But I think immediately following that, hearing from people who had demoed the product made me even more excited about it. But I do want to hear your first impressions, being somebody who is so immersed in this world of, augmented virtual reality. Yeah.
I think, obviously, like you, pure excitement. And I was shaking when they announced it. I mean, I couldn't even see. I think I blacked out. I think all I saw was Apple Vision Pro, and then the next thing we were like 5 minutes past, and I was like, "What happened?" Yeah, I think a big thing that hit me was excitement and just feeling inspired because it has been so long since Apple has released something that really is groundbreaking. And I think, I kind of want to get into this because I think it's really interesting, kind of the Steve era versus the Tim Cook era, because, it feels like, after Steve passed, we had about 3 or 4 years where products were still had a pretty big Steve Jobs thumbprint on them. And then, of course, Johnny kind of kept the torch burning. And then, my feeling is the past several years, 5 or so years, it has been less inspiring and felt a lot more just iterative, kind of coasting. And I obviously understand that you can't just produce innovative product. You can't produce innovative products every single year, right? Like there has to be some iteration involved. But I think there was, and maybe kind of this goes back to what you're saying with maybe the actual keynote address itself. Like I feel like when I go back and look at a Steve Jobs keynote, there was this inspiration and vision that Steve had. It feels like the keynotes kind of lacked that. Even this one, I mean, it's just overproduced. But comparing, because I had to go back and watch the first iPhone release keynote just to compare, and I don't know, there's definitely a different feeling, but at least my gut reaction was amazing. Like, hey, like at least they're taking a risk. Maybe it's not exactly what Steve had envisioned, but it's like a super exciting new product that I'm obviously really into. So
was this something that Steve had been working on towards the end?
I believe Steve had a vision for some sort of AR glasses. I'm sure there's some. I feel like I just watched a few like little cuts and snippets of Steve talking about in the future we'll have screens floating in front of us. And I think there are discussions around where Steve and Johnny had a vision for AR specifically. And I think, this is a really interesting discussion because the vision for the product that Steve and Johnny had was very much you remain in the real world. They don't like the fact that you can close yourself off and live in a virtual world. That was not something that they had a vision for. Even though the Vision Pro does that, you can do that. But it's very clear from Apple's presentation, they leaned heavily into the AR mixed reality stuff. So that's a big kind of question I have is, it kind of feels like Tim Cook released a VR headset and then everyone was like, but that's not the vision. It should be AR. And so they just said, okay, we're only going to market the VR headset as an AR headset. And it's like interesting.
Wait, that's your take on this headset?
Well, that's just one observation. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I think it's just an interesting thing that it is very clear that there was no mention of virtual reality in the entire presentation. The headset obviously is, in my opinion, a VR headset that can do mixed reality. That's how I would categorize it. Obviously, you can call it augmented reality, or I know we've tried to do the acronyms before, but I feel like that. Oh, one thing I did really like is they called it spatial computing, which makes a lot more sense than trying to stumble over acronyms.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so it was nice to hear the spatial computing side of things. And it makes a lot of sense. Like, obviously, we worked at Control Labs thinking about this a lot with kind of neural interfaces and the future of computing. And it makes a lot of sense having the two phases, virtual and augmented, kind of meshed together. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, right now, it feels like this first headset, I wonder how good it's going to be for sort of like enhanced multitasking or just like enhanced tasking of using it as like a secondary monitor screen, using it to enhance your workflow. Like, I wonder if it's mostly optimized for like sort of that entertainment, like solo entertainment situation. I mean, I feel like they really emphasized that aspect of it. But I'm also curious about how good the sort of pass through is to give you that sense of augmented reality while not actually being, a pass through lens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to try it. I think all the reviews say it's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
The,
think
the the one thing too, I think the images that were displayed on the keynote were rendered from the headset. It wasn't like a graphic overlay. It wasn't like visual effects magic. It was literal video.
yeah.
Um,
The thing that I thought was like really encouraging was the reviews from people like MKBHD saying that it was truly magical, like especially the navigation, because right now the navigation is like eye tracking to sort of like hover over an icon and then like a finger tap to select. And he said that that was like an amazing experience. And, I guess like, props to Apple for taking their time with these things until they get something good, until they get that really great experience, at least in one aspect of the product experience, you know, and sort of like giving you optimism for like whatever is coming next.
yeah.
Because there's so many other companies that have sort of rushed these things ahead, and I mean, I think you need a mixture of both kinds of companies, because sometimes you can get sort of like happy accidents or whatever, like that push to get something out there. The developers can reveal something that you didn't understand about it, and I think the same thing will happen with the Apple Vision. But
Yeah.
it just there is a level of polish to this that you would hope for out of Apple.
Yeah, I think on that point, what's interesting is from reading articles and stuff I've seen online, it feels like there was definitely an internal struggle of it's not ready yet versus we have to release it. It seems like there was a few articles talking about how the design team said it wasn't ready, and Tim Cook was like, "Well, we've spent 10 years on this. We're releasing it." Which maybe it does. It definitely feels very polished and finished from Apple, but is it as finished as Steve would let it out? Like, in my opinion, if Steve was still around, I don't think he would have let that thing out. I think he would have waited until he had much more of a AR glasses type scenario, just because that was much closer to his vision, as opposed to kind of releasing a VR headset, which is just it's another kind of interesting thing where I think from a business standpoint, Apple is starting to lean more towards the move fast, break things model, which they're very far away from that still, but it's like they are taking a step back from, releasing iPhone 1 and releasing iPhone 0 essentially. That's kind of what my gut says, but that's obviously speculation, and who knows.
The thing during the keynote where I felt like it wasn't as Apple as it used to be, or maybe as I remember it being, was like the amount of M2 style chips that they were talking about. Like there was 4 different M2 chips. And I don't know if that's like in all the computers or if that's across all sorts of different devices. But like, it's just like, guys, this is just too much. These are too many chips.
Yeah. I mean, Tim Cook has obviously kind of taken the product lineup and chopped it up into a gazillion different options, which has made a lot of great business for sure. But it's, there's obviously the story of Steve coming back in, I don't know when he came back, the 90s or whatever, and, really slimming back the product options back down. He's,
yeah. I mean,
that had happened before to Apple, so.
Yeah, he came back in 97. Yeah, I mean, I will say when I was talking about the polish of the design, I was mostly talking about the experience and what these reviewers had sort of described of the experience. I think we can maybe get into the industrial design because I actually I have some issues with the design, with the industrial design of the product.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hesitant to say too much about it now, having not seen it in person and not really like been around it to experience it. But I feel like, Apple is known for this kind of like unibody aesthetic. Like there is this feeling of like a unified form in many of the things. I mean, sometimes there's a hard intersection, but like, I mean, all the way back, if we're talking about like when Steve Jobs came back, it's like the aesthetic immediately became unified forms, unibody forms. And then, fast forward through like the MacBooks and everything like that. Of course, like when they're closed, it's the unibody, and when it's open, it's not necessarily as unibody. But the watch as well. Like one thing that really stands out to me that I was thinking about today was that there's the part where the armband or whatever you would call it intersects with the glasses, and it's a sort of a blunted, piercing intersection. And my confusion with that is like, why would you not reference the Apple Watch that has that same type of intersection between, I mean, I take that as a rubber, that armband as a rubber piece.
Right.
Why wouldn't you do that flowing, sort of intersection to like the pill cross section that the watch has? Like, why wouldn't you reference that unless you were saying like, okay, well, this is a new aesthetic, or they're trying to convey something else. But like, I think that's the part of it that I have trouble with, is it feels a bit disjointed between the different parts and their different functions.
Yeah. Well, say something nice, James, and then.
Well, I mean, from the front, like there's a lot of details that I love from the front. Yeah. Like it is giving me those, I mean, it's Apple Watch, but it's also very like 2000s Apple, of those very soft forms. And I guess that they've been doing that with the Apple Watch and the headphones, the AirPod Maxes, is like that very soft, inviting form. I mean, I think there's so much of the other VR like market is either like the precision route, or it feels like almost toy-like or game console-like.
Right.
And this feels like something in between. It feels human, but it feels precise. It feels approachable, which I think like Apple has always been really good about, is like, let's make something let's make new tech approachable so that people engage with it. and want to experience it and want to touch it and want to hold it. Like that whole thing is very soft and precise and like, makes me want to touch the headset and the materials and everything like that and experience them.
Yeah, I would agree that the details and the form feels very touchable. I don't know if that's a right descriptor, but I really do want to touch it because it just looks, there's just like so many little interesting things. I do agree with you. I think my pain point on the design of it is that kind of side silicone band. My kind of thought on it is not necessarily the connection point. For me, I love that perfect, iconic goggle shape that's just all black gloss glass. And
yeah, that part is sick.
That just feels so strong. And then you start to kind of come around the side and, there's just a lot more going on. It kind of feels like the hierarchy starts to fall apart. I almost wish that side silicone piece was made out of the same fabric material. So you would just get fabric on the rest of the headset. It would just be like everything's fabric. So
yeah. And I don't know. I'm not sure what the decision there was, and if it's something that has to do with how they have to house the speaker.
Yeah, I mean,
in the side.
I'm also like 100% confident that Apple made the right decisions for their constraints. Like, obviously, they did an amazing job. But in a world where constraints don't matter, that's what I've done.
Yeah, I think. Well, it's interesting because like, if you look at, I'm looking at it on Lemonoosh right now, and of course it was immediately Lemonooshed.
Oh yeah.
But I feel like there's this one shot that's sort of it's like a darker shot of the silhouette. I guess I can share it in this. I don't know if people will be able to see it in the end.
Yeah,
let's see.
Try it out.
Okay.
I'm sure people can look up
like
too.
this shot here gives me more appreciation for the form than when it's completely lit and you can see all the different elements of it like as being highlighted as in different materials. Like just seeing the form itself, like in this light, it feels a bit better than it does, fully lit, all the materials standing out.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the details kind of fade away. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But yeah, it just does feel a little bit disjointed. All the details on their own, like if I were to like section off details of this product, I would be like, wow, that's a beautiful detail. And then you shove them all together and it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to like contrast because I think obviously a VR headset is a much more complex thing than a box with fillets on it. And so you are going to have some different elements to kind of fit the human head. But I was going to say, if we look back at like the Quest Pro, that feels very unibody and very like completely joined together. I think James might have left the call here. Let's see.
Oh no.
Oh, are you back?
We're still recording. Thank God. I accidentally did a search in the window where we were recording.
Okay, good.
Isn't that fun? Quest Pro. I was trying to look up the Quest Pro.
Oh, I got it right here, James.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, from a side view on the Quest Pro, it's very strong. You have just that perfect, and we've talked about this one, right? Where you have the perfect sideband folding up over the headband. Now, whether the form is, I think the front of the Apple headset is gorgeous, better than the Quest Pro, but from a material standpoint, this all fits together.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like the Quest Pro, because like even looking at the Quest Pro versus the Quest 2, it's like Oculus is even segmenting itself as like, here's the precision professional headset. Here is the hobbyist entertainment headset.
Right.
And I feel like Apple is like maybe trying to obscure that line slightly, but I do feel like this one does feel a little bit more like that it's about entertainment and it's about viewing and things like that.
Right. I think if it was like a precision instrument, it would feel more like the Apple Watch Ultra. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, I would agree with that statement. But
I will say I did want to like point out, because I really enjoy the little orange details and the head strap, the back, where it's kind of like linear, this kind of like accordion.
yeah, that's stunning.
I was just in love with that. And I think you saw that, but I also made the reference to Guy Mann's Daft Punk helmet, the gold one, where there's the wires in the back in that same spot in the same shape that the Apple, Vision has. And I'm like, oh, just make me a robot. I'm ready.
Yeah, do they use any sort of similar textiles in anything else? Because that I haven't seen them do anything like that. And I'm just thinking about like how complicated it is to create a textile like that. Like, you
Yeah.
know,
It's wild.
and I don't know if they acquired any companies or acquired any technology that was already doing something similar.
The only thing that I think of is the HomePod off the top of my head.
Right.
That's the one that has like kind of some crazy knit stuff going on, but this seems even crazier.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like Nike technology or something.
Probably even better. I feel like if Apple came out with a Nike or a shoe, they would just dominate.
I don't know. I think you'd get some Allbirds.
Maybe that's true. They did release that Nike Plus thing. Remember that thing? A little puck that went into your Nikes.
Nike Plus puck.
Yeah, it was like a pedometer before the Apple Watch.
This was an Apple product.
Yeah.
It's not coming. Oh yes, I see it.
Or was it called Nike Plus? I forget what it was called. Yeah,
God,
Nike
those
Plus.
two logos stacked on top of each other looks terrible.
Yeah, it was classic pill shape, red pill with a Nike logo and Apple logo. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at that in forever. I forgot what it looks like.
It's pretty terrible. You can tell I'm in an office by how many phone calls. I'm not ignoring phone calls, by the way. This like everybody gets these phone calls, and it's just because we're in a small company. It's just whoever picks up first.
Oh, interesting.
Let's see. Yeah, look at that. Ugh.
Yeah, good old pill shape.
Yeah. Those logos are not meant to like sit next to each other.
Another detail I wanted to point out on the Vision Pro was the crown or the knob for turning the immersion up and down. I think they called it immersion. They're not calling things augmented or virtual. They're just calling it, spatial computing versus immersive computing. The interesting thing I think about that little dial is every other VR headset has been has used software or gestural controls to turn on mixed reality versus virtual reality. Because on the Quest, you can tap the side, or in Gravity Sketch, you like use the controller to take off your headset virtually. But this is a little knob, a physical knob, which I think is really interesting, both from the idea that it's a spectrum and not a on-off, and the fact that it's a hardware thing and not a virtual thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are both very intentional, and both. I don't want to say unnecessary, but it's more of a statement. It's like, again, going back to this idea of, hey, there is a hardware switch to escape the virtual world. You will always be able to get back to the reality. Not necessarily, obviously you can take the headset off, but like from more of a philosophical standpoint, it's like we're making sure that you are based in reality. Because it is kind of an unnecessary little button. Like theoretically, you could just do tap and it would make the entire design seamless, but it feels very intentional and very much a philosophical moment of, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have it on the AirPods Max as well.
Right. For volume.
They have the dial.
Is it for volume, right?
I think so. Does it also do anything with the noise cancellation?
It has probably a few gestures you could do with it, like press and turn. Yeah, I think it's a little different with volume, though. I don't know. There's something a little different about it being the fact that you're turning up and down the immersion. That's how my gut feels. But
the dials are something to me that make it feel, that give me that sales driven vibe, to be honest. I mean, I obviously I like a physical thing. I like a physical dial. I started wearing an Apple Watch recently. I got a hand-me-down Apple Watch from my sister. It was the first time I'd ever worn one. And like, I do really like having the dial versus doing something on the touch screen or whatever it is. Right. It's like, because it just feels like no matter where you are in the software or whatever, that is always available to you. And especially with the Apple Watch on such a small screen, it's nice to have like an available functionality no matter where you are within the system, that it's always there. That and the on-off button. So like, I like that. I like having those controls always there and very tactile. But like, I remember when they came out with the AirPods Max and I was like, really? Like a little dinky dial on the top? And I'm wearing I have the Microsoft
look at us
headphones.
We're two guys. I got Bang & Olufsen, you got Microsoft. We're on PCs right now critiquing Apple. Look at us. Oh my God.
Who are we to judge? But it has these incredible dials on that are like full, sort of the full cup.
Right.
At like I like love the way that these things feel, but it also feels like integrated. And that's the part of it that the dial on these Apple products, either the Vision or the Max, it doesn't feel integrated to me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I feel like it would feel integrated if it were at a hinge point or something where it was being concentrically aligned.
Like the dial on the headband. Would you agree the dial on the headband feels more integrated?
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Much more integrated.
I can see that. It does kind of feel like this little tiny thing that is kind of like floating on the surface of the front.
Yeah. But I guess, it's there because, where else would you put it? But like, I can appreciate that ever since Steve Jobs came back and sort of the iPod that there is sort of this like circular, seamless, like rotational way of navigating systems. Like you said, like the spectrum of just like there isn't like this infinite loop rather than like a slider or something like that. That it's, I don't know. And that's sort of this like frictionless approach to technology that like, lends itself to this idea of approachability.
I'm curious what you think. So this was a big feature of the headset, is the front-facing screen that shows your eyes. Because that is a huge question in my head of the reasoning behind that. I mean, obviously they state the reasoning because you want to wear this thing and have other people see you, but
Yeah.
I this is another one of these things where it feels like the vision was a little disjointed, where going back to the idea that Johnny probably really pushed for having AR glasses, and then Tim Cook was like, well, let's ship a VR headset. It's like, well, what if we put a screen on the outside so it looks see-through?
Right.
I don't know.
It's I mean,
I need to experience it, but
it's silly. Like it's, to me, I understand it, and I think like the way that they started off the reveal was to make you think that it was a pass-through screen,
right.
that it was, and so like that was a little deceiving, and I don't know how I feel about that sort of deception, and then finding out that it was like that it's cameras facing your eyes or something like, and of course the memes are just rolling in.
Oh yeah,
and
that's classic.
It feels weird. It feels uncanny valley in some weird way. I mean, they have like, it looks like they have lights that sort of obscure it. Like they have this sort of like bluish pattern or something that obscures it, so that it's not at least like really trying to make it seem like you're looking through the lens. But it's like, it's a little goofy.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about the fakeness of it. Like it feels a little bit dishonest, which is the opposite of, I think, what Apple usually tries to go for. They usually tried to go for, I feel like I could do the Johnny quote, like unapologetically aluminum, like just exactly what it is,
Yeah.
So that's kind of another sticky point that I'm unsure about. Yeah.
How are you feeling? How are you feeling about it, having experienced so many different headsets? Like, do you feel like if somebody else released the same product, you would be like, imagine it's exactly the same product, exactly the same specs, everything, but it's a different company. Are you excited about it?
That's a great question.
And yeah, and obviously it's in a total vacuum, but
I think my question would be very much geared toward Gravity Sketch. And that's kind of also my question with Apple's headset. Like, I think, would I be excited about it? I'm not sure. I mean, I think probably. I mean, from an ID standpoint, it's amazing. So I think I would have taken notice and said, wow, that's a beautiful industrial design. But from a overall vision standpoint of this is what the product does and this is what it's aimed for, I would have a lot of questions regarding Gravity Sketch. And that's also my current question right now is I do really want this headset. But if it doesn't allow Gravity Sketch, then I'm not gonna. I would be really. It would be really tough to buy a $3,500 headset to watch a movie when I don't watch movies. So it's like,
Listen, Nick, it can create a very photorealistic vision of your head under the rock that you seem to live under when it comes to culture.
oh my gosh.
No, I mean,
Show me memes. Oh, did you see? Oh, wait, did you see that? I think Zuck posted a thing that was like, we're working on getting reels on the Quest headset, so you can watch reels in Quest. And I was like, I just like posted a GIF of Clockwork Orange where he's just like eyes wide open, just screaming.
Oh no. Yeah. That sounds terrible. Yeah, I mean, I think so what you're saying is like they did seem to highlight this idea of just like enhanced workflow
Right.
through the Quest or not the Quest, the Vision Pro, and like also like meetings and things like that. But your question would be exactly my question, which is like, I think all industrial designers are interested in sort of this augmented reality landscape where we can really enhance our workflow, because currently we have all of these hard skills, and all these hard skills exist in a physical environment. We also have all these software skills like SolidWorks and KeyShot and all those things. Like, what is going to come along that will bridge those two realities together? And is this iteration of the Vision capable of doing that, or will we have to wait longer?
And I think really what my question is it's not necessarily around the augmented versus virtual. Like, I love to design in mixed reality, so I enjoy seeing the space, the augmented reality. It's more about the controllers, I think, and the ecosystem, right? My first impressions, and obviously this, in a year we'll find out whether this is real or not, but my first impressions is Apple is pushing very hard on augmented, and hey, instead of a monitor, you just have a flat virtual screen. And it feels really much like they're not doing any sort of physical moving around. No one's getting up out of their chairs, drawing in the air. People are sitting in their chairs, looking around, moving, twitching their hands. There wasn't any motion, right? There wasn't any physicality to the headset. And Gravity Sketch is, a physical performance. So, yeah. And I mean, I definitely have faith in the Gravity Sketch team. I mean, they want to have their software on this headset as much as I do. And I think...
Yeah, but how do you do it without controllers? I think the question.
That is the big question. So we'll see. I mean, I've seen a few comments that, Shay and the Gravity Sketch team have commented on, and I'm sure they will try their hardest to make it work. So we'll see.
Cool.
I think there was one more thing I was going to say. Oh, another design detail. Some comments around the materiality of the front visor being glass and aluminum, and those materials being heavy. From reviews, it seems like the headset is not the lightest weight headset out there. And, the idea of making it out of heavier materials on the front versus plastic and making it really lightweight is an interesting design choice. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but...
Well, didn't you point out, I saw you point out on the Discord that there's that section of the presentation where they show the dad filming his kids, and they show a a strap over his head.
Yeah, there's an optional top strap.
Yeah. So I mean, is that to compensate for the weight?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
From the reviews I saw, I think I was watching Norm from Tested.
Hmm.
He had mentioned that it did feel not significant, but noticeable, the weight. And he's also a pretty avid VR user, so he has a lot of experience with other headsets.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think any of the first-hand experiences that I listened to said it was like a bad thing. But I think it, from a design standpoint, like it's interesting that they did go with the glass and aluminum. My counterpoint to kind of using plastic is like, if you're gonna make a $3,500 headset, especially an Apple version, it feels like you have to use premium materials. Like spending $3,500 for a plastic thing
Yeah.
is not going to feel as great. Even though every other headset is plastic and there are super expensive, industry, marketed headsets.
Yeah. It just doesn't seem like something Apple would do.
Mm-hmm.
At a certain scale, they get into plastic, like with your AirPods Pro and
Right.
whatever.
Or the iPhone
But
5C.
yeah,
My favorite.
but
That's
it's
one of my favorite iPhones, by the way.
But for the most part, you're gonna get aluminum. You're gonna get glass. That's just like the Apple stamp.
I will say the pro of using the glass front is it's not going to scratch.
Mm-hmm.
My valve index is like scratched for. It's like. Let me show
Oh no.
you. So it has a plastic front to this thing. Just look at that.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, it's all scuffed.
I think what was I going to say? I think that because all these companies are trying to force us into a sedentary life, we should actually make heavier headsets and heavier controllers so that people are like, we should not focus on lightness at all. We want to stay fit and trim. And the way to do that is by making them increasingly heavier. I think once you get used to the Apple Vision, which is 10 pounds, you move on to the, Apple Vision 2, which is 15, and then so on and so forth. You need to train up to the point that you can use the Apple prophecy.
We're all just walking around with like no necks, just heads straight down.
Huge necks.
Our necks are just so muscular. Oh man.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think maybe one other thing I wanted to touch on, excuse me, was I do want to just talk a little bit about Apple versus Meta. Obviously, I've used all the Oculus products, and I have a lot of admiration for what they've built. And I think it's so easy to dunk on Meta because it's Facebook, and they've obviously had their issues. But one thing I do admire is the headsets are democratic and affordable for a lot of people to kind of enter into the space. And I think Apple entering into the space doesn't discount Meta's, products at all. I actually think that it's going to help them a ton. Apple making a VR headset legitimizes VR and says, my mom was talking about it. My dad was talking about it. My sister was talking about it. Like they all were talking about it. No one's going to talk about the next, Quest 3 or whatever Meta releases. But for all three of my family members to message me on the day saying like, are you going to get it? I want to try it out. It's like, it's exciting. Like it's going to bring a lot more interest to the space, which rises the tide of everyone, right? It's going to make all the headsets better. Meta's going to come out with something even better next year. So yeah, I don't know. I wanted to just mention that. Obviously, we have a lot of friends and, worked at Control Labs, and I know that they have the technology to do a lot of the stuff that we're seeing in the Vision Pro, but they've made the design decision and the kind of vision to bring it to more of a democratic price point.
Mm-hmm.
And they still have a founder-led company, which is another pro that Apple does not have. So
Yeah. It does just make me wonder at what point this technology, even though you're saying, Meta has made it more democratic, it's still not widely adopted. And, you know, I wonder what it's going to take for, that iPhone moment
yeah,
of like, oh, like, are you going to get your upgraded headset this year? Are you going to upgrade this year? Like, oh, the new one's coming out. Are you going to get it or not? Like, that conversation that you have with people in general about things like the iPhone that we don't have about headsets.
I mean, this is kind of my thought is that is the Vision Pro is that moment, right? I think there is a little bit of discussion around this where when the iPhone first came out, and obviously we were younger, maybe you can speak more to this, but it was a pretty niche product, and it was also a pretty, I don't want to say like not functional, but it wasn't necessarily, the business people of the world kept their BlackBerries for a while. They said, no, BlackBerry's better because it has a keyboard, and I write emails all day. But eventually things changed, right? Eventually iPhone 4 comes out, iPhone 5 comes out, eventually people realize, oh, actually this is the future. Like touchscreens are the future. And I feel like that's maybe kind of where we are with the Apple Vision Pro. It is obviously absurdly expensive, $3,500. But of course, technology gets cheaper over time. Apple's Vision 4 or 5 will be affordable, or more affordable. It'll still be premium, I'm sure. But, maybe that is the moment where we're all talking like, oh, yeah, we have the new Apple Vision 4 and we're all FaceTiming with our, crisp, perfectly rendered avatars, and everything's past Uncanny Valley. It's all realistic now. And we look back at the Vision Pro, we say, oh, yeah, that was the moment that really brought VR to the masses. But
yeah, I think I just formulated this thought in my head, so let's see if it's intelligent or not.
let's hear it. If it's not intelligent, we're going to arrest you and you take you to jail, James. So.
I know exits out of this building that nobody else knows. So I think for something to get adopted, you bring up the BlackBerry and the first iPhone. I think people initially got those things for work. It was a means of like enhancing their workflow and making them so that they could be connected on the go, drafting emails, whatever it was, because so much of work, as so many people know, is just like correspondence. There's also the other end of things, which is like you get mass adoption of things because of the entertainment aspect, like especially through gaming. And I feel like right now, VR and AR have not made enough of an improvement to gaming or to workflow that people have adopted them. It's like your employer is not like, welcome to your first day. Here's your phone and here's your vision.
Yeah.
Like that's not happening at a wide scale yet.
Right.
And so like, I think we need to get to that moment before, you get sort of this super specialized, whatever it is, like super specific niche to adopt it. Or not even a niche, but it has to come, it has to be adopted through there. 'Cause like It's like my dad got a BlackBerry, and as a kid, I immediately was like, oh, interesting. Like I would start to play with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then like as soon as the iPhone came out and the iPhone had video and whatever little games, it's like, oh, but but I I guess like there was that same thing. Like if somebody brought home a headset, like sure you would try it on, but I don't know why that didn't take hold as much as a phone did, an iPhone did.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thought. Maybe there is just something fundamental of having a device strapped to your head versus something you pass around. Um,
Mm.
it's just a slight bigger hurdle.
Yeah.
I do think maybe to your point around the mass adoption side, maybe that's kind of why this Vision Pro feels more iPhone 0 and not iPhone 1. You know, like maybe the next one will be the iPhone moment, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, regardless of what happens, I obviously do believe that this is the future. Like we will get rid of our phones at some point and have some sort of headset glasses scenario.
Yeah, I mean it seems almost inevitable, but I think I've seen some analysis of like there's the VR space, VR AR space, and there's the AI space. And I feel like the AI space kind of leapfrogged over the AR VR space in terms of like we all, augmented reality and artificial intelligence were both promises of the future. But the reason that I think artificial intelligence has leapfrogged it is because things like ChatGPT are like immediately applicable and immediately useful in a way that almost takes no training. It's literally like having a conversation with like a virtual assistant. And an assistant that's very smart can draft something for you like very well, but it's like I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a good point, right? Like it does feel like VR still, I think what they say is like, what's the killer app, right? It's like, what is the application that is going to make this thing a mass product? And beyond Apple, right? Like if it had a killer app already, we would all have VR headsets besides us niche, techies and early adopters and gravity sketch users. It's like, I don't know.
I know what the killer app is.
What's that?
Keynote VR.
No. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's the joke is like now that all the keynotes are virtual, all the WWDC events and all the Apple events are virtual, it feels like Tim Cook and all the execs are actually just AI avatars. They're just rendered because everything is so perfect in their videos. It's like, are these people real? Is it just AI?
Well, it is weird because the one guy especially during the keynote, and I can't remember his name. Craig, who somebody pointed out in the chat there's AI in the middle of his name, which I thought was very funny.
Oh my god.
But no, like there were parts of the keynote where his voice sounded like it was passed through an AI generator. Like it did not sound real.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think it's becoming one of those things where, you've tweeted about it. It's like, just assume everything is AI unless otherwise told,
Artificial until proven human. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's the way I'm looking at everything, except for things that are tangible.
Right. Well, once you get your Vision Pro on, gotta start thinking about real life now. It's like I don't mean to slip down dystopian rabbit hole there.
But I don't know. Any final thoughts?
huge congrats. Obviously, this is a big moment for the Apple team, and we obviously have friends in the Apple sphere. So it's like, they've been working on this stuff for a long time, 5-10 years, I'm sure, maybe even longer than that. I'm sure there was, research around this. So it is amazing to see a company that, arguably the best design consumer products in the world release this new thing. And like, I don't know, it's like a good, it's just inspiring. So congrats to the whole team. And yeah.
Yeah,
That's my final thoughts.
absolutely. I mean, this is no small feat. I'm sure that there were like a ton of really heated conversations over details and heated exchanges over manufacturing and
Yeah.
getting this thing made. I mean, it's a huge, huge achievement. I mean, I think we critique out of love, and and a ton of respect. Like, it's just, for those students out there, yeah, it can be really fun to sort of have the hot take about things, but it's the process for product development from start to finish is no joke, and it's not as straightforward as you might think. And it can become, I could just imagine the office politics just around this project.
It must have been.
And like
insane.
the political games that had to be played.
Yeah.
Because it
It's
even,
definitely a departure for Apple, right? It's like, it's a big statement. It's a risk, and I admire that risk. I think,
yeah. I think it was a Google executive a while ago. They made they made a risk, calculated risk that lost them a lot of money, and their response was just like, that's exactly what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think we should look to big companies to make risks, and maybe fall flat sometimes, but like, that's what they should be doing. It's funny how often it's like the small guys taking huge risks. I like to see a big company taking a risk.
Yeah.
Every once in a while.
For sure. All right, man. Yeah, I'm trying to think what other. I don't know. I've been thinking about this thing for like, I don't know how long it was. 4 days ago. It's just thinking about it nonstop. So I'm sure we'll have more little thoughts in the future, and hopefully, hopefully get our hands on one eventually.
I'm sure just like AI, we'll have a new thought every week about it.
Oh, one last thought I was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
This goes back to the kind of the rising tide lifts all boats, is that I think one of the biggest impacts that's underrated that no one's really talking about is the fact that Apple is going to have the Vision Pro in all of their Apple stores and allow demos. Because when I first was interested in VR, I was following Leighton McDonald, another SCAD grad, amazing guy, huge into the VR, AI, Web3 scene, tech scene, does amazing work. And he was like, I was asking him, like, how is this VR thing? You have this Oculus Rift. Is it cool? You're sketching with it? That looks cool. And he's like, oh yeah, you have to go try it. And I was in Texas at the time, and I was like, oh, I don't know anyone who has this thing. And apparently there was a demo at Best Buy. You could go to Best Buy, and I drove there, and I talked to some, high school kid that was like, just hated his job, and was like, oh yeah, just strap it on, and whatever. He just didn't care. And I put it on, and my mind was just blown. I was sold there right then and there.
Nice.
That was 6 years ago, so I can't even imagine the impact of someone who's never tried VR, walks into the Apple store, tries it the first time. Their mind's going to be blown.
Yeah. Wait, so are they in stores right now?
No, it's going to come out
for demo
2024. So still got a year.
Well, isn't that the release of the headset itself? I thought the demos were coming earlier.
I haven't heard that, but
Am I wrong?
I I would think that they're only going to put them in store when you can buy them. I don't think they've ever done a demo before you can buy thing. But maybe that was something else. I don't know.
I thought.
That'd be
Let me
amazing
see.
if it was. I mean, I'd be running over there right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to look it up, and I can't find what I'm looking for.
But yeah, that was one thing that I haven't really heard anyone talk about is just the going back to the mass adoption thing. It's going to be everywhere. The Oculus Rift in the Best Buy scenario is not everywhere, right? So yeah, I think that's going to be a pretty big impact that is underrated.
Yeah, totally.
But cool, man. Yeah.
All right, man.
I think we'll call it an episode because we definitely.
I mean, this is just like the Cybertruck episode. It's like we can't.
Yeah.
Can't jam anything more into this. I mean, this is a big product launch.
For sure.
Years in the making. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out, which is something that I saw in the demo or in the keynote was when they revealed the vision and they do that highlight along the bottom of the goggles.
Yeah.
100% looks like the bottom of the logo of the Apple logo, and immediately made me think of the sort of 2000s era Apple logo with the sort of like shine to it. That sort of like plasticky shine.
Yeah.
I was like, let's get back to that. That's like my favorite era of Apple still.
I love that detail that you pointed out. That's
Yeah.
great.
Anyway,
Awesome.
Yeah. So we'll save our updates. I guess we'll just have a big update show because we need to talk about your trip to Milan and the unveiling of your chair.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's just a little teaser.
A teaser. All right. Cool, man. All right. As always, I'm Nick.
And I'm James.
Peace.
Later.